Hello and welcome to the March or Die show today. Very glad to have you joining me. I'm Jeremy Stalnecker here with Sean Kennard and excited to have you joining us. This is the show where we do our best. And I say we do our best because that's all I can promise. We'll do our best every episode to give you the perspectives and principles you need to march when it would be easier to stay where you are and die. We all know that in life there are challenges, there are difficulties, obstacles, and even traumas in our past that really work to keep us from moving forward. And we can make a decision in those moments to stay where we are if we want to, but that's death. Without forward movement, we've given up. We have died relationally, spiritually, emotionally. We're not making progress, but the better choice, the better decision is to march. And that's what we talk about on this show. And we've got a great show, great conversation for you today. But before we get there, something special to announce.
Yes.
Our lovely model over here,
indeed.
Sean. We have been working to continue to develop the March or Die brand, and I mention this pretty regularly. marchordie.com is the website for the show. Archived episodes are there, a lot of other content and ways to connect with us. All that's contained there as well. But we also have a store there, and we have a new T-shirt dropping on that store, the March or Die T-shirt, which Sean is wearing. And if you're not watching, you need to go to YouTube and check it out, or go to March or Die and order yourself a shirt. But he's going to model that for us now.
Yeah.
So go ahead and model
do
it.
the special modeling.
Go ahead and model.
So we got the vertical March or Die logo on the front left chest, and then of course we'll show the back. We got to show the back.
Look at that.
You see it on the camera?
It's
Daniel, how is it?
Yeah, you can see it. So it says March or Die, and then at the bottom here, I don't want to get weird here, but I'm just going to say, I'm making a way in the wilderness and streams in the wasteland, Isaiah 43:19. Different versions of that verse, but
There are, yes.
But the idea, obviously, is regardless of what's happening, right? You need to march, and God makes those streams. There's a version that says streams in the desert or streams in the wasteland. So It's an awesome design, and I think really calls to mind, but really pictures what we're trying to communicate here.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
Your circumstance, your situation doesn't dictate whether or not you can move forward.
Yeah.
So go and check that out. Go get a T-shirt on marchordie.com, marchordie.com. The store is there. Some other stuff's there as well. And we were talking about this before. This is not something for us. This doesn't benefit, me and Sean. This is about you hopefully having something you enjoy wearing and are proud to wear out in public. But every purchase supports Mighty Oaks, the Mighty Oaks Foundation, and the work that we do with veterans and first responders and service members. So it's a way for you to get something that you will be proud to wear, but also something that supports a great cause.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think wearing a shirt too gives the opportunity. It creates a conversation piece, which allows people to share. Mighty Oaks and March or Die and what we're doing and the mission that we have that we're trying to push forward. So it's a dual purpose initiative for sure. Yeah,
it's super cool and done in partnership with 9line, which a lot of people are familiar with as well. So your design.
Yes.
You designed it.
I did. Yes.
It's one of those skills you keep to yourself.
Yes.
You designed it.
Yes.
And then 9line took it and produced it for us. So another great pro veteran company. And,
yes, they've been great. They do a really good job of knocking it out of the park.
So that's our commercial for today. But go get yourself a shirt, and it's important that you do. One, because we want you to have them, but two, because if you want other designs like this, we need to sell some.
Exactly.
So let us know that you care about this, and that'd be awesome.
That's very true.
Today we're going to talk about one of the principles that we discuss for moving forward. There are a number of things that we would say are principles for moving forward, and I have the list here on my phone because I forget things. Faith is really important. We talk about faith often. Adaptability, being able to adapt to your environment and to your circumstance. Perseverance, which we talked about, I think the last time we were together,
episode.
we talked about action, right? It's good to know things, but it's better to take the step. You can know that you need to march, but until you do, it really doesn't mean a whole lot.
Yeah.
But there's another one that we're going to talk about today that is, it's super important, but it's also super powerful. And that is the principle, the idea of perspective. Perspective is so powerful.
Yeah. Absolutely. I agree 100%. How would you define perspective?
How would you define
How
perspective?
would you define perspective?
Well, why don't I read it for you?
Look at your notes.
Why don't I look at my notes and read it for you? Because I forget things. I think I just mentioned that. What is perspective? It's understanding that our viewpoint shapes our reality. By shifting perspective, we can see opportunities and challenges and find new ways to approach them. So that's probably more of a description of perspective.
Yeah.
You know what it is. It's shifting our reality. But perspective simply is how we see things.
Exactly.
It's how do you see whatever it is you're looking at?
Yeah.
You know, and the place from which you stand shapes how you see that thing.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of examples of this. It's funny. Two people can watch the same scene unfold out on the street, whether a crime is committed, an accident happens, whatever. Two people can see the exact same thing, but because they're standing in different places, their perspective is different. How they see it is different. And so even some of the facts that they come back with and how they feel about what they saw may be different.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I agree. I think my base definition is perspective is the lens through which we view the world.
Yeah.
Based on our experiences, emotions, and belief systems.
Yeah. Good.
So,
good.
And I think what's important for us to realize is that perception is our reality. So how we perceive things is how we believe them to be true.
Yeah. So
to your point earlier, two people can be talking about the same thing, have two completely different perspectives, and both believe 100% that they're right and true. So
we've seen this unfold, I think, dramatically over the last couple of months as the election gets closer, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's always just fascinating to me to watch people argue from two different sides of the same issue. And there are a lot of issues that we could argue, but they'll take an issue and they believe, whoever it is speaking, they absolutely believe they're 100% right because of their perspective, that belief system, their own background and what they've experienced personally. And so the way they see an issue is informed by all of these other things that form their perspective. And so your perception is reality, whether we like that or not. It really is.
It is. I'm curious, I think that, I love that this is a principle for March or Die, because I think perspective is something that people don't consider a whole lot.
Right.
And I think it's extremely powerful.
Yeah.
And I think that if you can understand how to, I don't want to say take control of your perspective, because that's really hard to do.
Yeah.
Right. Because it's based off of your experiences and the biases that you create through those experiences.
Right.
But I think if we can be conscious of our perspective,
and
how we might yield the power of shifting our perspective, I think that we would have more resolved conflict, more empathy and compassion towards people in society.
And that's what we're going to talk about, is how do you shift your perspective? When you hit an obstacle, a challenge, a trial, when you think about the traumas of your past, in order to move forward, in order to move beyond those, often you have to change your perspective.
Yeah.
You have to see what is happening different. A couple of verses I want to start with, because the Bible talks about this, and it's funny, the Bible doesn't say shift your perspective or change your perspective, but it gives us examples. One of my favorites is found in the book of James in the New Testament, chapter 1. James is speaking, fascinating story about this guy, right? He's the half-brother of Jesus. So Jesus didn't have an earthly father. We talk about that. James is the son of Mary, Jesus' mom, and Joseph. Mm-hmm. So half-brother. If you know the story of James, he did not believe that Jesus was the Messiah until Jesus rose again, right? Mm-hmm. You can't deny that now. And so he is the Messiah. He is God. James becomes a huge leader in the church, in the first century church, and then he's martyred. So he had his perspective changed by a really important event. He says this, he says, "My brothers, count it joy when you fall into various temptations." That's crazy, right? So various temptations, that's a word the Bible uses. It means trials. That's the word that's used in other versions. When you fall into trials, when these difficult things happen to you, you need to count it joy. That's a major perspective shift for most people. And then he says this, "Knowing this, that the trying of your faith works patience." And then he goes on and talks about how patience then develops perfection or completeness, wholeness, maturity in us. Well, that is a perspective shift. And that's what he's trying to communicate here. He's saying, look, trials will come and you can either get under them and experience the weight of those things and the difficulty of those things. You can allow them to keep you from moving forward, or you can see them as something good because of what they're developing in you. That's a perspective shift. Here's another one, Romans chapter 12 and verse 2. The Apostle Paul says, be not conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you may prove what is good and acceptable and perfect will of God. Same thing. He says you need to change your perspective. Don't be conformed by what's happening around you and what other people are saying, but rather allow your mind to be changed.
Yeah.
And he would say by the word of God and a relationship with God. But allow your mind to be changed so that you can do what God has called you to. There are other verses, but I think it's really interesting that these New Testament believers leading other Christian people, they start off often with, you need to look at this different than you've been looking at it.
Yeah.
And that's an important place to start.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a powerful thing. And I think I was reading this book recently. You probably read it before, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, from Stephen Covey.
Yeah.
And he calls them paradigm shifts.
Sure.
It's basically it's the same thing. It's what we're talking about, perspective shifts. And he's telling this story when this really hit home for him, this paradigm shift, this perspective shift. He's telling the story, he's leaving some conference or something. He gets on a subway car and this dad and kids get on the car and they're screaming and yelling. It's pure chaos. And Covey's shocked at the just no attempt to control his children whatsoever. Yeah. So much, he's so irritated and annoyed that he tells the guy, hey, can you control your children?
Right.
And so the guy says, oh, well, we just left the hospital. Their mother just died.
Yeah.
And so Covey has this huge perspective shift, like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I was annoyed and irritated. Now he's feeling, probably like not a good guy, right? And and filled with now empathy and compassion.
Yeah.
And so I think that the ability to understand exactly what you're talking about, taking that perspective and understanding, choosing gratitude and joy, in that situation. It's the whole, society's view of like the glass half empty or the, glass half full, whichever it is, how do you view it? And it's been really impactful for me because I mean, transparently, I kind of view things more on the negative side. I mean, just being open. I don't know if that's because I was, a cop for a long time. And so I saw a lot of negative things, but it's, the Lord's really been working on me recently to really, really choose joy and gratitude in those times.
That's good.
And it's been very, very impactful for me.
Yeah.
Very powerful for not only for my personal growth, but for the relationships that I have as well.
You said choose joy. I think that's an important aspect here too. We talk about being a victim. Sometimes we think, well, I can't shift my perspective. I can't look at this different, but that's not what the Bible says.
Yeah.
I mean, these are, we could go as far as to say these are commands. You need to look at this different. You need to think about this different. You need to make better decisions. But that's exactly right. People need to be empowered with the understanding that they can choose to look at their world a different way.
Yeah.
And that may not change their circumstance.
Yeah.
But they can see it different.
Absolutely.
That's good.
And it is. That's the power of choice, exactly what you're talking about and you're right. I've had these conversations with people who truly believe that, they're the victim of the situation and they just cannot grasp that making that choice. But it is a choice. You need to be able to, remove yourself from that situation and look at it, objectively, and evaluate whether or not it's actually as big of a deal as you're making it out to be, and what steps you can take forward to get off the X, to march forward and make a change. But it takes intentionality. It takes action to do that.
And that's important because your circumstances may be terrible.
Yeah.
I mean, that may be your reality. But focusing on how bad it is not going to help you take those steps forward.
Yeah.
And so it's shifting your perspective. So when we talk about that, the question that people should ask is, all right, I got it. How do I do that? How do I shift my perspective? So if you're talking to someone, you need to change your perspective. They say, how? Sean, how do I do that? Where do you start them?
So I had this conversation actually recently, so I'll use an example. But I would say to me, and this is the power of perspective is so present in marriage.
Sure. Sure.
Because it'll expose your
Yeah.
perspective,
Right. Right.
significantly.
Yeah.
So I would, the way I look at it is believing in the good. And so, for example, what I mean by that is, we'll use the example of marriage, believing that my wife is good at the end of the day. No matter how I'm feeling, I truly believe, or else I wouldn't be married to her, that my wife is good. In the moment,
Yeah.
I might be feeling a different way, right?
Sure.
But coming back to that belief that she is good. So here's an example. We were, have community with another couple who was asking us some questions about, their marriage. And they were talking about this, how they're getting in fights, and it all came down to their perspective and the fact that I don't think that they believe that the other person is good at the end of the day. And so the example is, husband is coming home. And these are good people, successful people.
Sure.
Not living a destructive life.
Yeah.
So husband's coming home. He texts his wife, "Hey, I'll be home at 5:30." She's like, "Great, I'll cook dinner at 5:30." Well, on his way home, he drives by his barber. He's like, "Oh man, I need to get a haircut." So he stops to get a haircut.
Yeah.
Takes longer than he thinks he's going to run in and out. Takes longer. So he gets home like 6:15. So he's like 45 minutes late. Wife's upset, obviously, right? And so she gets upset and is a little more short with him, and tells him, dinner's cold. You should have been home. You told me you were going to be home. Right. You're not home, right? Yeah. And so then he's like, feels disrespected, and so then he's, what I stopped at the barber. It's not a big deal. It's not a big deal, right? And so when we were talking with them, this concept clicked. Like, hey, do you believe that the other person is good? And they're like, yeah. Well, then why, when you respond to them, it comes out in a way that you don't believe that they're as good?
Very accusatory.
Very accusatory. Because the alternative of that is, okay, so the husband was late. And the wife, again, tells herself before she starts this conversation, I believe my husband is good. And she says, hey, you said you were going to be home at 5:30. It would have been, it would have meant a lot to me if you would have texted me that you were going to be running late, so I could have shifted dinner. His response after that would have been far less, reactive, right? And then on the flip side of that, let's not put all the weight on the wife. The wife responds maybe too short, and instead of, again, he tells himself, my wife is good. I believe that my wife is good. Instead of saying, you disrespected me, you're yelling at me, whatever the case may be, him saying, you know what, you're right, I'm sorry, I was late, I apologize. I should have texted you. Next time, I'll text you. There's zero conflict after that whatsoever. Yeah. And so that's a long way to say, evaluate the good that's in your life when you're dealing with a situation that makes you want to have a negative perspective.
Yeah, right.
That's my answer.
Yeah, if you go to the bad right away, then that's what you communicate.
Which is hard, right? Because that's what we do. That's exactly what we do. We harp on the negative experiences that we have in life. And because, when we're tempted to have a negative perspective, it's because something is wrong. And that perception is our reality. So it's really bad in that moment. Where if we can think about, like we talked about, choose the joy, choose the gratitude, believe in the good, right? Then we can step back and say, you know what, like, yeah, this really sucks, but this is not that big of a deal.
Yeah, that's good. Man, that's good. And that really applies to marriage, right? And I think, I can't remember the exact wording of the verse, 1 Corinthians 13, but love assumes good or assumes well, right? I forget how it's said exactly, but yeah, we need to assume good about someone.
Yeah.
I've said this before. Someone being dumb doesn't mean they're trying to hurt you.
Yeah.
Right. And sometimes we're like, well, you tried to hurt me. No, I just wasn't that smart.
Yeah.
Right. I should have done better.
Yeah.
So yeah, look for the good and assume the good.
What about you? What do you got?
One of the things that helps me here, that is I've thought through this and shifting perspective, is there may be a better way to say this, but embrace your reality. Embrace your reality. Right. So we find ourselves in these situations or these circumstances that we want to go away. We want to resolve themselves. We would rather not be a part of, and we kind of feel the pressure or the weight of that. And from where we sit, it's all bad. It will never get better. And the longer you sit in that, the worse things are. There's something to putting your arms around that broken reality and saying, this is mine.
Yeah.
I'm accepting responsibility for where I am, even if I didn't get myself into this situation. This is where I am right now. This is the reality, and I need to move forward in spite of it. I think embracing the reality of our circumstance, embracing the reality of our situation, even when it's bad, it can be very empowering because we're no longer the victim of that circumstance or that situation. We now are put into a position where we have to look for resources. We have to look for help. We have to see things different. We have to find the way out. We have to figure out how to take that next step forward, whatever the case, because this is my reality. Now, I don't mean by that become the victim of that reality.
Yeah.
That's not at all what I'm trying to communicate. That's what a lot of people do. What I'm saying is take responsibility in the middle of that reality and embrace it. All right, this is where I am. And as James said, there's probably something for me to learn here. There's something for me to grow here. There are areas that I can learn here. What good things can come out of even a broken or bad or difficult situation, and how do I move forward in spite of them? Embrace that reality.
Yeah, I like that. I like the accountability aspect of that.
Yeah.
I think accountability is such a powerful tool.
Sure.
When we're willing to take accountability for our circumstances, and whether or not we were placed in those circumstances because of some exterior situation, or we placed ourselves. Either way, we can take accountability in the fact that we are there and we need to take action to resolve that issue.
Right. Yeah, that's right.
I think a lot of times being stuck in that negative perspective or being stuck in that situation, people refuse to take accountability because, again, we talk about this victim mentality, is they want to shift that blame on somebody else. You know, it's somebody else's problem while I'm here.
Yeah.
And all that does is make you stay there. It just keeps you stuck there.
It puts us in this position where now someone needs to come fix it, right?
Exactly.
I talk about this sometimes on, just kind of the world that we live in. We love superhero movies and we love all that stuff. And it's entertaining, but I also think there's an underlying, I won't say theology, but almost culturally, like this theology about superheroes.
Yeah.
It's that I'm waiting for someone to come rescue me. I'm waiting for someone to come save me. We can find entertainment in that, and those are fun movies.
Sure, yeah.
But they all kind of portray this, the entire world is helpless.
Yeah.
Were it not for this one or two or this very small group of people that are doing something.
Yeah.
Well, we can take that same attitude about the difficulties that come into our lives, because from where I sit, it's all bad and I need someone to rescue me.
Yeah.
You don't need someone to rescue you. You need to embrace that and figure out how to move forward in spite of it.
Yeah. So I have a question for you, and I was kind of wrestling with this perspective, idea when we were talking about this. And I think it's powerful to view others' perspective, to be empathetic and compassionate towards others and the way they view things.
Yeah.
And to even challenge your own perspectives, right? I think that creates growth and even resilience in yourself. But how do we draw the line on evaluating that perspective against what I would consider, or what I would call, like a ground truth, like a truth that we're not willing to shift on?
Right.
So, for example, like if we're evaluating all these perspectives, right? Well, somebody's perspective might be completely contradictory to my core values. And so where do we land? How do we create balance between being open to new ideas and perspectives, but also like putting our stake in the ground?
Yeah. Well, I mean, to me, perspective is it's about understanding. Maybe that's another word to use. I need to shift my perspective in this situation because I want to understand fully and completely this situation. So I don't know that there's harm in receiving other people's inputs. In fact, I think it can be very helpful, even if they run afoul of your own fundamental life principles.
Yeah.
Because it does help to shape an understanding. If nothing else, it helps me to understand why that person sees this thing that way.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't agree with you, but now I get it. You're not the enemy.
Yeah.
You actually have a reason that you are looking at that the way that you're looking at it. I mean, fundamentally, the Bible is our ground of truth.
Yeah.
And so the one thing that I can't make a decision to violate are clear scriptural principles. So if there's a clear scriptural principle involved, then I need to stand on that and function from that. But I think most of the time we're talking about perspective, it's not a a good or evil kind of situation. It's more about, do I have a full grasp or a full understanding of this circumstance or the situation I find myself in? So there are issues. One of the issues that's very important to me, and it's very important to you, is the issue of abortion, right? This is something, I know we agree on, and this is very, very important to me as an issue because it is about life. It's about, us as humans being the image bearers of God. I mean, there's so much wrapped up in that. And that to me is a good versus bad perspective thing, right? Now I can understand why someone may see this different than I do. And I'm willing to listen to that as long as they're willing to have a conversation about it. But there is an evil in that.
Yeah.
Most things we're talking about, though, are not that.
Yeah.
Most things are a difficulty in our lives, something hard that's come into our life that stopped us from moving forward. And often it stopped us from moving forward because of the way that we're looking at it. So we need to take inputs, advice, other perspectives, so we can understand, so we can move forward. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I know. I love that. I think what you said is 100% true. The perspective is about understanding, and I think it doesn't mean that we have to. We can understand people's viewpoint without
agreeing with
without
it.
changing that belief system.
Yeah, 100%.
I think that's one of the most powerful things in conflict resolution. I don't know who said this, but it's this idea that seek to understand before you seek to be understood.
Yeah. That's good.
And so I think that in any conflict, which is perspective, especially negative perspective, is going to bring up some level of conflict. That mentality, I should seek to understand before I seek to be understood.
Sure.
It's going to help create a resolution in that conflict and allow you to shift your perspective a little bit, even if at the end of the day, hey, we believe different things.
We're not going to see this the same way.
Exactly.
But I have a better view of the situation as it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think you're right too. I think, we're talking about this idea of perspective, and those moments, those ground truth moments those aren't the things that people actually have trouble with seeing others' perspective.
And I don't think that's what we're talking about most of the time.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
I agree.
That's good. I think one of the other, there are several, but another important way to shift perspective is by having kind of we talked about this before, but a growth mindset, or having the ability to learn from your failures.
Yeah.
Again, we can't be protective in that. We've failed or we've gotten hurt, something's happened, and I want to protect myself. You don't learn in those moments.
Yeah.
You can't protect yourself and continue to learn. But you do need to ask yourself, all right, here I am. This is what's happened. This is the circumstance. What can I learn from this?
Yeah.
That shifts your perspective immediately.
Yeah.
Because now I'm not looking at only the bad in this situation. I'm looking for things that I can learn so that I can continue moving forward today, but more importantly, in the future.
Yeah.
So that I don't find myself here again.
Yeah.
But that requires a shift in focus, a shift in
does.
perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think we have to be willing to shift that focus. We have to be willing to take other people's advice, other people's experience to heart. And I think that's something that's really, really hard for people to do.
Yeah.
I think we refuse to believe that anybody else has something valuable that could contribute to my life.
Yeah.
And that can lead to...
Yeah, I have on my list, surround yourself with positive influences. And then I have as a separate one, seek out feedback, right? Those are kind of the same thing. But you're exactly right. I think, again, we get our emotions because, you said this, your perception is your reality. We get our emotions so wrapped up in this thing that we want to defend, we want to protect, we want to pull inside. We want to stand on this. Well, the way I see it is the only way to see it. When there are people from other perspectives, whether because they've lived a little bit longer than you, they've been married longer than you, they have kids that are older than yours, they've been through this before, whatever, they have a different perspective than you. And in one conversation could shift your perspective.
Yeah.
If you would seek them out, listen, receive it, and apply it to your life. So yeah, what you're saying is so important, but that's where a lot of people fall short.
Yeah. And what you said earlier, I think, is true. I think it has to do with the fact that when people believe that they're wrong, or that when somebody poses their opinion, that they've somehow failed in some way, shape, or
Yeah,
another. And so I
yeah,
think embracing failure, or we talked about this, I believe it was the last episode, of failure as a part of success.
yeah,
If you can see failure as a part of success, whether or not it's a failure that you're dealing with, at the end of the day, if you can adopt the mindset that failure is a part of the road to succeeding and
yeah.
not the opposite of succeeding,
That's good.
then it's a powerful thing to be able to grasp. Um, but that's it's easy to talk about and
One of
hard
those
to do.
easier said than done
Yeah,
situations, right?
exactly.
Someone asked me the other day, what are some of the resources that you had in your life, speaking to me, when you were struggling coming out of the military? And I hadn't really thought about it in that context exactly. I've talked about people that came along and encouraged me. Some of them confronted me. I've talked about all of those pieces, but I've never thought you know about them kind of as a system, right, or as a
Yeah,
whole. Like you had these pieces in your life which helped you move forward. What's interesting in my personal experience, when I came out of the Marine Corps and I went into to ministry, and I've told this story many times, but I felt pretty hard. I was just so frustrated, so angry, and I was having so many problems. I had people in my life that were able to confront me: a
yeah,
pastor, Christian friends, men in the church, my dad,
yeah,
my wife. I had a church community. I did not put those things in place when I started to have problems.
yeah,
And if you're having problems and you don't have those pieces in place, you need to find them and pull them in.
yeah, yeah,
But I think the reason I was able to move through that season of life the way that I did is because those pieces were already in place
yeah,
before the bottom fell out,
yeah,
before I lost my way and I, lashed out at everybody around me. I already had those pieces in place.
yeah,
And I think when we're talking about shifting perspective, some of this is preparing for the time when you need to shift your perspective.
yeah,
Surround yourself with the right kind of people now. Don't wait until things are bad. Get some mentors, get some people who can speak truth. Be in a healthy place so that when those times come and your perspective is skewed, you have resources available. So it's not this, I have to completely humble myself and
yeah,
go find somebody.
yeah,
No, these people are available. They love me. They care about me and they'll help me. So
yeah,
preparing for that, I think, is a big part of it as well.
yeah. No, community is so
Yeah.
important, and surrounding yourself with the proper community is so important. There are very, very specific times in my
Yeah.
life where, thankfully, because of the community, I was able to have a perspective shift
Right.
because somebody was willing to speak truth into my life, and because I had created that relationship with that person where I trusted what they said. I was able to receive that
That's good.
perspective. I
Yeah.
was able to receive their truth that they were sharing with us. Um, because I mean, it's true. What is it that you're the sum of the five people you
Yeah.
spend? What's the
Right.
saying?
Sure.
Something like that, right? You're
Sure.
the sum of the five people you spend the most time with.
Yeah.
Well, if those people are, living a life contrary to the life you want to live, then your life's not going to look like you want it to look.
Yeah.
And I think, we need to be conscious of that. And even outside of that, in today's time, I think it's important to reflect on, people. I love this saying, "You are what you eat," and I say all
Mm.
the time, "You are what you consume."
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yep.
in
Yeah.
today's world, we
Yeah.
consume so much, and we live in this media world, a social media
Yeah.
world, where you can spend, a lot of time just scrolling and consuming other people's content.
Yeah.
And I think it's important. While I think it's important to challenge perspectives and to look at other viewpoints while testing them against your ground truth, I also think it's important to discern whether or not you should be consuming,
Sure.
the
Sure.
content that you're
Yeah.
consuming. I think that's a lot of the problems that we deal with, especially in young men today, is that they are, you know, following people who are living a life that looks great, but is going to lead to destruction.
Mm.
And it does often lead to destruction
Sure.
over and over and over again. But it looks great now, and it's filled with, all these glorious things that they
Yeah.
get to pursue while they're, young and want to pursue these, things that today's world would tell you is awesome and great,
Right.
but they're full of emptiness. So I think, in this conversation of perspective, I think an important thing is to evaluate the perspectives that you're receiving, the content that you're consuming, the movies that you're watching, the music that you're listening to, because they're all going to shape your perspective about life,
whether you know it or not.
Whether you know it or not.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's good. Man, that's really good. There's a lot there.
Yeah, there's a lot there.
But it's so easy to consume right now.
It is.
Because content is everywhere.
I am somebody who doesn't like being on my phone, and if I'm not careful, I will catch myself like consuming content, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like, what am I doing? Like it was, so, and I really do, like, I hate being on my phone. I see social media as a tool for good. It could be used as good, and what we're doing, I try to utilize it for that. And based on my own specific, goals in life and mission in life, I try to utilize it for that. But in that process, I get exposed to other content. And so I think it's extremely important that we evaluate that and make sure that we consider that as we're shaping the belief systems that we have in life.
Yeah, that's good. When we talk about perspective, and there are a lot of other things we could say, but I think one of the things that's been very powerful in my life, helpful in my life, keep using the word powerful, but helpful in my life is a commitment to process and persistence. Commitment to process and persistence. If you are focused on the process of growth, the process of forward movement, the process of becoming more fully what God has created you to be, then you're willing to shift your perspective to accomplish that. Be committed to the process. We become so committed to success right now that when something other than success right now enters our lives, we stop, sometimes fall back, sometimes give up. Be committed to the process, which demands that your perspective shifts to help you continue that process.
Yeah, I like that.
And then persistence. You have to decide, I'm not going to quit. I'm going to keep moving forward. Well, if that's your mindset, then when you hit a wall and all you can see in front of you is that wall, I'm not going to quit. I'm committed to the process. I have to change my perspective.
Yeah.
I have to start looking around and finding another way.
Yeah.
And maybe that requires reaching out for help. Maybe that requires getting creative, whatever that means. My perspective, it demands a shift because I've already decided I'm committed to the process. I'm committed to persistence. I'm not going to quit. So what do I need to do next?
Yeah.
And just making that decision allows us to be flexible in our perspectives.
I like that. Yeah. I like that a lot. It makes me think about consistency. Just something that when you were talking, it made me think about this word consistency as well, and process, persistence, and consistency. Because I think that people start a new journey or an agenda or whatever it is, and they face hardship or whatever it is, and then they kind of abandon course. So that believing in the process, being persistent, and believing in the promise of consistency, because at the end of the day, consistency over a broad span of time is much better than hardcore, intense commitment for a very short amount of time. We talk about this a lot in fitness and like in jiu-jitsu, right? We talk about this a lot. It's like, hey, if you were to go and train, 5 days a week for 6 months, you'd be good in 6 months. But if you were to train 2 days a week for 10 years, you'd be way better, right? So it's that idea of process, persistence, and consistency. They'll win at the end of the day.
That's good. That's good.
Like that.
It's good. Anything else?
You got?
Any last thoughts? That's my last one.
Yeah, I mean that was kind of my last one as well.
There are a lot of things here, right? But again, the basic truth is your perspective is yours, but sometimes you need to shift your perspective.
Yeah.
If you are committed truly to growth and moving forward.
Yeah, and last thing I'll say on that is the power of perspective shift will strengthen and help grow the relationships that you have in life.
That's good. Yeah.
That's my last thought on that.
That's a good thought. We're down on so many people, right? It's almost a habit. Like we've been taught to have a negative view of people.
Yeah.
Which some people need to be viewed negatively.
Well, sure. Right.
But then we take that home and we view our kids and our wife and our friends and everything negatively. Like shift your perspective.
Yeah. I think, and I said this, and it's true. I mean, and I say this openly, like I I have to challenge myself on that. But what I've resolved to say is that that's not an excuse.
Right.
So because I naturally perceive
Yeah,
things in a
sure.
more negative viewpoint, right?
Yeah.
That's not an excuse.
Right.
Where I think that's the powerful thing, where people, and we're using this word powerful so much, but
so powerful.
But I think that people are like, oh, I'm just a negative person. Well, that's not an excuse.
Right.
That's actually unacceptable.
Yeah.
You know, you can be a negative person, but make the choice to look for the good, right? To trust the process, be persistent, choose consistency. All these things we've been talking about. Believe the other person's good. These perspective shifts. You need to. Those are intentional choices.
Right.
Those are actionable items that you have to choose to do. And so it's not an excuse just to believe that you're stuck in your perspective and you can't do any better. Like, no, that's not an excuse.
Yeah.
Like, you should do better.
Yeah.
And that's something I challenge myself on in my marriage and parenting and life in general. Is we have to be willing to endure that process if we actually want to grow. Otherwise, we're just going to be stuck on that X, like we talk about, and that's where you die. And that's not, that's not what life's about. In any way, shape, or form.
It's good. Perspective
needs
to change.
That's it.
And the best way to change your perspective is to get a new T-shirt.
That's right. That's right.
That's the best thing you could do. Get a new T-shirt, March or Die, marchordie.com.
That's right.
Do that.
It's an awesome design.
If you are listening or watching, and I would encourage you to go to the YouTube channel and watch the show if you can. It's just an easier place to comment, to really absorb a lot of this. And then we put a lot of clips on there too as well. So, but if you're listening on an audio platform, that's awesome. Subscribe, make sure that you're getting the content. But then go to YouTube, check that out. Leave us comments. I would love to hear your thoughts on perspective, your thoughts on some things maybe even you've done to change your perspective.
Yeah.
And, even questions there. We'd love to communicate with you there. So thank you for doing that. And if you haven't subscribed. And then go to lifeaudio.com and check out the good content there, other great podcasts there as well. So a lot of good things going on, and appreciate you joining the show. Sean, appreciate you joining the show.
Yeah, happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
We'll do it again.
Yes, sir.
And I'll end the way I always end.
Do it.
All right. The bullets.
Yes.
Yes, when the bullets, I love talking about bullets. When they're coming your direction, and sometimes they do. Hopefully it's figurative and not literal, but when the bullets are coming your direction and it seems like the world around you is falling apart, you only have two choices. You can stay where you are and die. You can make that decision. People make that decision. Or you can do the better thing and march. So it always comes back to this. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? Thank you. Talk to you next time.